The first and most fundamental shift happens quietly, almost invisibly, which is why it's so often overlooked. When a man's feelings move beyond friendship, emotional neutrality disappears. And neutrality is everything. In friendship, there is warmth, affection, even closeness, but there is also emotional freedom. You can have a bad day and he'll care, but it won't stay with him. You can disagree and it won't unsettle him. You can pull back and it won't disturb his inner balance. That's neutrality. And the moment it's gone, the dynamic has already changed. When feelings deepen, your emotional state begins to matter to him in a personal way. Your disappointment doesn't just register as information, it lands. Your silence doesn't feel neutral anymore. It creates curiosity, sometimes concern. Your approval starts to carry weight. This is not obsession and it's not insecurity. It's emotional relevance taking root. Psychologically, this happens because attraction activates attachment mechanisms. Once attachment begins, the brain no longer treats you as an external figure, but as part of its emotional ecosystem. You're no longer someone he knows. You're someone who affects his internal state. That's a profound shift. You'll notice this in subtle ways. He becomes more responsive to your tone, not just your words. He remembers how things made you feel, not just what happened. He may replay conversations in his head, wondering if something landed the wrong way. Friends don't do this. The line has already been crossed. So instead of asking, does he like me? Ask a more precise question. Do my emotions affect him? Because when your happiness, your distance, and your presence start shaping his internal world, friendship has already evolved into something far more significant. And this is the thought I want to leave you with. The end of neutrality is the beginning of meaning. And once meaning exists, the relationship is already asking to become something more. Once emotional neutrality disappears, the next shift becomes unmistakable if you know how to look for it. His attention stops being casual and starts becoming intentional. This is not about grand gestures or constant communication. It's about where his focus naturally goes when he has choices. And that distinction matters. In friendship, attention is opportunistic. You talk when you cross paths, when the timing works, when nothing more pressing is happening. There's warmth, but there's also flexibility. When a man's feelings move beyond friendship, that flexibility narrows. You don't just fit into the gaps of his life, you begin to shape them. Psychologically, attention is one of the clearest indicators of value. We can't give sustained attention to everything. Our minds are constantly prioritizing. When you become emotionally relevant, your presence starts to outrank other stimuli. He notices when you're quieter than usual. He remembers things you mentioned in passing. He follows up, not because he's being polite, but because your inner world has become interesting to him. You'll notice this shift most clearly in how he listens. Friends listen to respond or relate. Someone who is developing deeper feelings listens to understand. He asks clarifying questions. He pauses before speaking. He reflects back what you've said, sometimes days later. This isn't technique, it's engagement. His attention isn't scattered, it's absorbed. Another key sign is that he begins to choose you. He creates time rather than waiting for coincidence. He reaches out without needing a reason. Not constantly, not intrusively, but consistently. And consistency is important here. Anyone can be intense for a moment. Intentional attention shows up over time, quietly and reliably. You may also notice that in social settings, his awareness of you increases. His body orientation shifts toward you. He checks your reactions when something happens. Even when he's speaking to others, part of his attention is tuned to you. This isn't performance, it's orientation. You've become a reference point. From a philosophical perspective, this is where connection moves from interaction to alignment. He's no longer just sharing moments with you, he's attuning to you. And attunement is what creates emotional intimacy. It's the feeling of being seen without having to ask. This is also why dismissing this stage as "he's just being nice" often leads to confusion. Niceness is generic. Attention is specific. We don't repeatedly give focused attention to people who don't matter to us. Time is limited. Energy is limited. Attention always reveals truth before words do. At this stage, many women make the mistake of looking for verbal confirmation instead of behavioral patterns. But attraction doesn't announce itself immediately. It reorganizes priorities first. Words catch up later. So rather than asking whether he's flirting enough or saying the right things, ask a deeper question. Does his attention feel intentional rather than accidental? Does he notice you when you haven't asked to be noticed? Does his presence feel steady rather than sporadic? Because when someone's attention consistently finds its way back to you, even without effort, it's not coincidence, it's emotional gravity at work. And here's the reflection to take with you. What a man consistently gives his attention to is what he is already choosing. And once you become that choice, the dynamic has already changed. As his attention becomes intentional, something else begins to happen beneath the surface. He starts regulating himself around you. This is one of the most misunderstood stages, because to the untrained eye, it can look like hesitation or mixed signals. But psychologically, it's the opposite. It's caretaking form.br. In friendship, there's emotional looseness. You can be unfiltered, impulsive, even careless, because the stakes are low. If a joke lands wrong, it passes. If you disappear for a while, it doesn't create internal conflict. But when a man's feelings go beyond friendship, that freedom disappears. Not because he's anxious, but because he's suddenly aware that his actions now matter. You'll notice him thinking before he speaks. He chooses his words more carefully. He may pause instead of reacting immediately. This isn't uncertainty about you. It's awareness of impact. He's no longer just expressing himself. He's considering how his expression lands on you. That consideration is emotional investment. Psychologically, this is self-regulation triggered by attachment. Once someone becomes emotionally significant, the brain engages protective mechanisms. He doesn't want to damage the connection, so he becomes more measured. This is a sign of depth, not distance. You may see this show up in the way he handles boundaries. He doesn't push recklessly. He doesn't blur lines thoughtlessly. Even if attraction is there, he respects the space between you. That restraint often gets misread as a lack of confidence, but in reality, it's respect paired with restraint, a far more meaningful combination. Another sign of this shift is how he manages vulnerability. He opens up, but not chaotically. He shares things that matter, but he doesn't overshare for attention. He's revealing himself intentionally, gauging trust rather than demanding reassurance. Philosophically, this is the difference between emotional dumping and emotional offering. This is also where many women feel confused because the energy changes. The playfulness may soften. The ease may feel heavier, but that weight isn't awkwardness. It's significance. Action has gravity now. Gravity slows things down. It makes movements more deliberate. Here's the important distinction. Avoidance creates distance. Regulation creates presence with care. If he were avoiding, he'd disappear, deflect, or emotionally shut down. But when a man is regulating himself because he cares, he stays engaged. He remains consistent. He doesn't vanish. He stabilizes. From a philosophical standpoint, this is where attraction becomes ethical. He's not just asking, "What do I want?" He's also asking, "What's responsible here?" And here's the thought I want to leave you with. When a man starts handling you gently, not because you part, they're saying without proximity. And proximity is how emotional bonds deepen. From a philosophical perspective, this is where attraction begins to turn into continuity. Desire exists in moments. Care not to report too soon, but integration is clarity in motion. It's behavior revealing direction before words are ready to catch up. People don't integrate what they're unsure about. They integrate what they're choosing, even subconsciously. If you're trying to understand whether his feelings have truly gone beyond friendship, don't just look at how he treats you in moments of connection. Look at whether you're woven into the fabric of his days. Because when someone starts building their life with you already in mind, they are not drifting towards something deeper. They're already moving within it. And this is the reflection to carry with you. Inclusion is a form of commitment long before commitment is spoken. And when you're no longer separate from someone's inner world, the relationship has already changed its shape. As integration deepens, something subtle but powerful begins to change in the space between you. The ease of pure friendship gives way to a quiet tension, one that isn't uncomfortable but meaningful. This is the stage where the dynamic itself starts to feel charged, even if nothing explicit has been said. And that tension is not confusion, it's significance rising to the surface. Br. In friendship, the emotional air is light. There's freedom to be relaxed because nothing is at risk. But when a man's feelings go beyond friendship, that lightness is replaced with awareness. Moments linger longer, silences carry weight, ordinary interactions feel infused with something unspoken. This is the emotional system recognizing that something important is happening. Psychologically, this tension emerges because two truths are now coexisting: desire for closeness and fear of disruption. He wants more, but he's also aware that moving forward could change everything. That inner conflict doesn't paralyze him, it sharpens him. He becomes more present, more attuned, more careful. The tension you feel is the byproduct of care meeting uncertainty. You might notice this in the way he looks at you when a moment stretches a little too long, or in how a casual touch suddenly feels intentional, or in conversations that almost go somewhere deeper than pause. These aren't accidents. They're signals of a connection that no longer fits neatly into the category of just friends. From a philosophical standpoint, this is the moment when ambiguity gains emotional weight. The relationship is no longer undefined because it lacks meaning. It's undefined because it holds too much meaning. Definition now carries consequence. Br. This is also where many people feel tempted to force clarity. The tension feels uncomfortable, and the instinct is to relieve it by demanding answers or labels. But tension isn't a problem to be solved, it's a process to be understood. It's the emotional pressure that often precedes honesty. Br. What matters here is how he handles this tension. If he leans into it with presence, staying connected, engaged, and respectful, it suggests emotional maturity. If he avoids it entirely, disappears, or shuts down, that's a different story. But when a man is falling for you, he doesn't flee the tensio. He holds it. Another important distinction is that this tension feels mutual. You may find yourself more aware of him too, more thoughtful about your words, more sensitive to his reactions. That reciprocity is key. Emotional tension thrives where there is shared significance. This stage is often quiet, but it's transformative. It's the relationship asking to evolve. And evolution rarely happens without friction. Br. So instead of fearing the tension or trying to eliminate it, pay attention to it. Ask yourself, does this space between us feel alive, intentional, and respectful, or does it feel confusing and draining? Because meaningful tension is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that something is ready to be acknowledged. And here's the reflection to leave with you. When a connection starts to feel heavier with meaning instead of lighter with ease, it's not breaking, it's deepening. Eventually, all of this leads to the final and most decisive shift. He becomes willing to risk the dynamic. Up until now, his feelings have revealed themselves through care, attention, restraint, and tension. But this is the moment where internal change demands external honesty. When a man's feelings truly go beyond friendship, staying silent starts to feel more costly than speaking up. In friendship, safety is the currency. The relationship works because nothing essential is at stake. But once emotional significance takes hold, safety alone is no longer enough. He begins to sense that maintaining the status quo is a form of avoidance, not protection. Philosophically, this is where comfort gives way to integrity. This doesn't always arrive as a dramatic confession or a perfectly worded declaration. More often, it shows up as vulnerability. He allows himself to be seen without the shield of neutrality. He initiates deeper conversations. He creates moments that feel different from before, more intentional, more intimate. These are invitations, not demands. They are his way of opening a door without forcing you through it. Psychologically, this shift represents a reordering of fear. Earlier, the fear of losing the friendship was dominant. Now, a different fear takes its place. The fear of losing the opportunity for something real by never being honest. That internal pivot is profound. It signals that the emotional value of the connection has surpassed the value of stability. You may notice him asking questions that weren't there before. Hypothetical futures, emotional check-ins, subtle disclosures of how he experiences the connection. He pays close attention to your responses, not to manipulate, but to understand whether his feelings have space to exist. This is emotional intelligence in action.br. What's important here is that risk always involves exposure. He's no longer hiding behind ambiguity. He's allowing the relationship to change, even though change carries uncertainty. That willingness is the clearest sign of emotional seriousness. But this is also the moment where many people hesitate on both sides. Fear whispers that silence is safer, that clarity might ruin something good. But silence has a cost too. It freezes a dynamic that is meant to evolve. And when something meaningful is held in suspension for too long, it doesn't stay intact. It fades. From a broader perspective, this stage is about choice. Love is not just something we feel, it's something we step into. And stepping into it requires courage. Courage not to guarantee an outcome, but to honor the truth of the moment. If you're wondering whether a man has truly moved beyond friendship, ask yourself this: is he willing to let the connection transform in order to be honest? Is he choosing depth over comfort, truth over familiarity? Because the moment someone risks losing what they have for the chance of something deeper, they've already made a decision internally. And here's the final thought to carry with you. When courage replaces caution, connection stops being accidental and becomes intentional.